And as telecom networks become more complex, the integration of RApps and SMO, that's service management and orchestration, is revolutionizing how operators manage and optimize their networks. This session will introduce leaders from Axiata, Ira Technologies, and Rakuten Mobile for how innovations can enable dynamic resource allocation, proactive maintenance, and also network self-optimization. And gentlemen, welcome to the session.
Thank you.
Happy to be here.
Great to be here.
Great to see all of you. Raul, good to see you again. And Shul, as always. And Dr. Tomek, we appreciate your time. I want to start with you, Dr. Tomek, if you don't mind. Tell us about the future of networks with respect to SMO and RApps. Just kind of give us a broad brush.
I can't predict the future, but I can express my expectations. The world that we are living right now, or at least on the radio side, has two big trends. The first is that you have this disaggregation, which has happened with ORAN, and now it's becoming very real, really entering into the networks. And I would say the second is kind of splitting the technology evolution. I mean, for the western part of the world and for the eastern part of the world. And this is the context especially for the operators in Southeast Asia, who are very much, using both of type of the technologies. And in this context, SMO is also for us a hope to get a middle layer to get the network automation very soon. So it's not only about, managing those cloud run, not about, resolving conflicts between kind of real-time and non-real-time resource allocations, but this is also a kind of middle layer to guarantee technology evolution in RAN for the coexistence of the ORAN networks and traditional networks.
And Shul, I wanted to go over to you on AI ops, but before I do that, do you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, no, I think, oftentimes we look at SMO as, like a platform to enable innovation. So an analogy that I like to go back to all the time is, it's like a movie industry in the past that, okay, if you want to launch a movie, you need like a big budget, you need like distribution to launch it in a theater. But now with YouTube and Netflix, anyone who is creative enough can just launch their video. It has to be good and people should love it. So I think with SMO and a RIG platform, that is what we are opening up. And that's where the true benefit of ORAN is that, okay, any university, any startup, or any RF engineer who has an idea, there are standard interfaces, open interfaces out there. Launch your app, and if it works, then I think it can go along. So I think that's what SMO and RIG would enable, like a marketplace of ideas, which is open for everyone, not just for a proprietary vendor or someone else. So I think that's what SMO and RIG and what we are excited about in that domain.
Yeah, I think to add to Anshul's point, SMO and RIC are the openness in the ORAN network itself. For the first time ever, I believe the industry kind of acknowledges what they were lacking, what openness really mean, and innovation is ecosystem rather than doing everything by themselves. The good thing is everyone is talking at least about the openness, having apps coming from different parties, collaborating together and measuring the outcome rather than anything else. On the network side, I think there are a lot of networks we will talk about going forward. There'll be NTN, non-terrestrial network, there'll be terrestrial network, there'll be wireless, there'll be wireline, all coming together. The customer doesn't care. All they care about is that they are getting served by their intent on the runtime. And when we are talking about customers, if you move across the halls, there are customers which are enterprises now, which are retails now, and every operator in their particular region now know the B2C customer is saturated. The next opportunity is the enterprise or private networks. When those kind of enterprises talk to you, they want a customized network service, quality of service, and packages to be created. All of these things today take years or months for operator to get onboarded. The product catalog is super static. The only layer which kind of makes the network configurable and intent-driven is SMO, powered by our apps or X apps or D apps, whatever we want to call it. It's also important that this layer has to be configurable or abstracting the network enough that the underlying network doesn't become a black box. There are partners who do talk about it, but most of the time they are closed box. They come with their own cloud, they come with their own application, they come with their own orchestration, but then you are entering into the same world of EMS application and infrastructure black box kind of thing. So it's for the operator, it's for the ecosystem, it's for the partners to come together to define, but keep refining and doing the right thing for the industry, because we've been long waiting for the innovation cycle to hit the telecom. And for us, it's very important that we take the right steps now. Talking is good, but walk the talk.
Sure. And Shul, could you maybe walk us through an example of how AI ops enhances self-optimizing networks or automation? Just kind of walk us through that.
Yeah, sure. So I think, if you ask RF engineers, a lot of them would agree that RF is not science, it's an art. And obviously there is innovation happening at individual levels. There are a lot of smart people out there, but there are two problems, or there were two problems with this, that either they are not able to automate what they do because things are manual, because, it's a different skill set. And also you can't scale. You can't clone like an RF engineer into, hundreds of them to solve day-to-day problems. But I think with AI, this is what we are able to solve. That like an RF engineer doesn't need to know how to code. AI would do the coding for them. And I think that's what Rahul and we were working on it. And I think in Ira Navik also, they are creating this app where you can just talk to it in a natural language and there will be an R app for you. So as an example, every week we get tons of incidents and things like that in Rakuten Mobile. So one of the simple AI ops example, if I have to give, then top of my mind, there are some GPS issues that happen in the antenna, and typically someone would troubleshoot it and they would point it to a different PDB server since GPS on site is not working. Long story short, the process that they were doing manually, and they were facing this kind of issues almost every week in a different site. Mm-hmm. So now with AI, whatever happens more than 3-4 times, it can just learn from what they used to do manually, and it can simply automate that as a playbook that can be rerun as and when the issue happens without even anyone intervening manually. So I think AI is basically making telecom engineers software coders by helping them to basically automate stuff without needing that specific skill set to be able to code. Now telecom guys can be best at what they are and leave the coding and automation to AI. So I think AI ops in general is helping us scale and automate a lot of these day-to-day stuff into playbooks that can be replicated.
By the way, this term has been there for a decade now, right? Nothing new. Every year we come and talk about it. But to his point, what we are talking about here is everyone, you cannot make an RF engineer coder, but you can help them with probably an agent or an app or a platform which can generate the apps or use cases for them. It's very difficult for an RF engineer to think about creating a workflow, a use case to deliver end-to-end. But they can tell you in the natural language to say, I will check the alarms first, I'm going to check the tickets next, I'm going to check the neighbor sites, and then I'm going to check these KPIs, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If this happens, the root cause is this. In the old world, they would actually go to an SI partner or would go to somebody else to code that for them. And some of them are very, very statically bind to the architecture the network topology has. So every time you go, you're going to have to customize your app and platforms, and hence the integration takes a lot of time. So now the AI is actually helping for RF engineers to create those apps and those use cases real fast. The second thing which is very complex in telecom is, think about as a fresh grad, you enter into telecom, and you don't understand where to read about the network topology, what is 5G, why people are talking about 6G when the 5G is not deployed, why people are talking about 9 sector, 12 sectors, why there is CUDU, split 7, split 3, and all those kind of things. But when you have these, let's say an agent or a partner to talk to, then the same fresh grad can feel empowered in an organization which a person would be in like 3 years or 4 years. And if you see the IT world, which has done their part and made a lot of revenue or money, they were building these small platforms and capabilities to empower the organization. And hence they came in flash and say, oh, you don't need IT anymore. Our platforms are self-capable, self-healable. Under the hood, they're still running the scripts. They are at max doing AI ops. But hence, in telecom, we need to start thinking about that. And I think that's what we can achieve with platforms like what we are doing in ARA as AppGen and our apps.
Dr. Tolmek, I wanted to ask you about some of the primary challenges when deploying SMO and R apps, really in these multi-vendor open RAN environments. Maybe some of the top-line challenges?
I would say the biggest challenge is interoperability, right? And telco was very much about the standardization in the past. It's okay. Now we have less standardization. If you are talking about the SMO itself, okay, there's some standardization, you know, on the R apps and so on. But not everyone on the southbound interface is following the standard. Yeah, so we are the vendors, the RAN vendors, who are better at this, and there are maybe some vendors who are like almost ignoring that, right? So, as the operator, we cannot choose our partners based on the technology. We are choosing our partners based on their contribution to our business, right? And now, from my perspective, you know, the SMO needs to enable us the kind of deliver kind of freedom of choice for the RAN partners. This will not come with standardization, but the AI will help. And what you mentioned, what is super important, openness. I would say openness is a new standardization, right? Because the problem of the standardization can be now solved by the LLM models. So we don't need to standardize, but we need to open, right? And I have forgotten your question, sorry.
No, it's fine. Actually, you answered that. Some of the larger challenges when deploying SMO and RFs.
And this is the main challenge, that theoretically you know how to implement the legacy, right? Let's imagine, you know, that SON is let's say that the SMO is a kind of SON on steroids. Yeah. The problems with the SON were mostly related in the implementation, not in the concept, not in the AI. The machine learning models are still existing. These are the same models, right? So how to get it implemented at scale? How to make sure, you know, that this app will work for every base station? This is the biggest challenge. There was some standardization done like by the OSSII for the legacy. There is intention, there was some also intention to do it like continue for 5G, but I'm not seeing the movement here, right? And this is something what operators can't do by themselves. This is, you know, where the industry needs to help us, and I mean like kind of industry pressure on the big vendors to be open, to drop, you know, this idea of building silos, ghettos, whatever you call it, you know, to try to monopolize the world, because no one will monopolize the world here. And I believe, you know, like if we achieve this openness, then we will not have any problems with the deployments of the SMO.
Angelo, I want to go to you and go ahead. You wanted to respond.
Yeah, so on the challenges front, I think I totally agree with Dr. Thomas. I think the standardization, the integration challenges, and to an extent, I think, as he mentioned, that maybe AI is the new SI, and a lot of these challenges would be solved. But also, you know, like if you imagine a world where, let's say, there are a few R apps over there being developed, and, you know, things are truly open, but also that brings a challenge in terms of that, you know, there will be a lot of conflicting decisions that might be taken by multiple apps, and someone needs to put a control on, you know, so that, it's a good world that everything is automated, but at the same time, it should not, like, you know, destroy or override or conflict with what these apps are doing with each other. So I think maybe it would be an interesting world to see, and that would be an interesting challenge to resolve once we get to that world. But maybe Rahul or Dr. Thomas, if you have any ideas on that.
May I just wanted to, yes, because conceptually, with the SMO, we are doing the same what we've been conceptually doing with the IMS, right? But we don't want to be SMO to be another IMS, right?
Exactly.
I think it's a mentality and DNA problem, like Dr. Tomek said. It's a simple workflow at the end. You can, and these are simple APIs in the end. We can wrap it around with the protocols and standards and say, yeah, I'm gonna do netconf only, or I'm gonna do a CLI, or I'm gonna do a telnet. But these are things which have been solved in the world from last 20 years. I mean, everything can be exposed in an API today. A LLM can generate an API for a platform. And there are LLM which will just read the output coming from an API and build an adapter on the fly to say, yeah, this is unstructured data, I'm going to put it here. I think it's more the willpower and the DNA and some of the operators which need to push the button to say this is how the future would be. I can replace any box in the network any day if I want to, and my network would still run like same. I don't like the word journey because most of people say it's a journey. It's what the new RFI or RFP should be. To say, you are being given the responsibility for this thing for 2 years. After 2 years, I'm going to take the decision. And you have to integrate with northbound and southbound in a way that you can be replaced. The adapters is operators. The adapter is ecosystem. And then the use cases also have to measure with the outcomes and fail fast. It doesn't have to take years. It doesn't have to take months. I mean, if we are talking about an SMO or a lifecycle manager, it has to be like months into the production. Today, we feel proud about the data we have. We don't do anything with the data we keep on data lakes. We feel proud about so many integration and protocols we have network that makes our life more tough and miserable. And that's why we need more people to manage these systems. Yeah. And if you're thinking about SMO, then this has to be one layer which abstracts the network and which does the automation or autonomous network with the apps. And the apps doesn't have to be Helm charts. Can be a script, can be a mop, like Anshu was saying, can be anything which makes you closer to the outcome you're looking for. And if your regular RF engineer is not able to build apps, then probably you're taken some wrong call in the partner selection or the platform.
And Shula, I wanted to start with you and just go down the line here and ask the same question. If you could pick one thing as far as the next step for scaling the deployment or the adoption, rather, of SMO and RApps, what would that be?
Since you asked for one point, so our strategy usually, and we are doing these things in Rakuten Mobile and we are helping others via Rakuten Symphony, right? So I would say that there is no one answer to it, but at least from the strategy point of view, it has to be around process, people, and products, right? So on each of these three areas, you need to invest. So I think most important is process, because technology, we are getting there. I mean, we are seeing a lot of new, innovation, even with stuff that Rahul is doing at IRA, and I think technology is becoming easier and easier. But how to have a process that, I was mentioning earlier, that anything that happens in the network more than 3 times, automate that. Any changes that are repetitive in nature, automate that. So I think that process and culture needs to be embedded into the organization, and I think that's where the people part also comes into the play. That, okay, if you have the right process, if you have the right skill set, I think that's one angle to start this journey from. Of course, technology, in the sense that, I think a lot of operators are talking about data lakes, they are talking about cloud native distributed architecture. So technology is there. More important is the culture process that needs to be aligned with this vision.
The only thing I'll say is build ecosystem for win-win, like every other industry does for startups. Don't kill them in the long life cycle of POCs and non-paid trials and other things, because it's not easy to run a startup. And I think if you start embracing the startup culture and the innovation the smaller companies bring in, and see them as value of what the product and capability they bring in, rather than their understanding of telco, I think we have enough ecosystem around our world with technology, which can work very fine. ServiceNow is a perfect example. Salesforce is a perfect example. They are not the telco companies, but they're making money both enterprise and telco because A, the platform, B, they got some partners ecosystem created for them where they made a win-win. What we are doing now in IRA as well. I think if the culture, embracing the startup, embracing the innovation on the face value, and fail fast thing comes in the ecosystem, I think telco could be the best industry to work for.
Dr. Tomek, the same question, maybe the next step or the primary next step for the adoption of RApps and SMO?
Get one use case with the good TCO that can work across the networks, and you have the market, right? And it does not have to be rocket science. It does not have that has to be like the super high level optimization of resources, radio resources. If you have like a good app that is managing well the power, that's good enough. A good app that is aware of that on the context, on the business context. What is happening with my services, how I can tune the network, to optimize even the power consumption. This is good enough. Then you have the TCO, and then the CTO has the very clear paper sheet to go to the CFO and to tell him pay for this, because this is missing right now. Yeah, this is missing.
And then, so simple, right? A customer will just come and ask for data. And then we have 20, 30, 50 systems to configure that. We know that the customer will only buy a SIM card and a mobile phone at max, and that's a static product catalog. eSIM is configured, pre-configured, the profiles are configured in HSS, and then the network just have to respond to that. It's so simple, but yeah, we can make it as tough as possible, or we can just say that, yeah, this app is doing the work it is intended to do, it is doing the outcome, we are good with it.
So from my perspective, it's not about having 1,000 smart apps. It's just having one app that works on 1,000 networks.
Interesting. Raul, I want to start with you and maybe get some insight from the rest of you before we close here. Programmable networks and R apps, if we were here this time next year, what do you think the discussion would be about?
Depends on which booth you're sitting. But I think we'll have a better definition of programmable networks. People will actually understand there are going to be multiple networks behind the scene. They'll also understand the intent from the customer will become one. I don't want to comment on the operating system, but the interactive interface might change. And then the network should be able to configure themselves runtime. Because if you're thinking about the customer of the future, whether it is a drone or whether it is a smart car, they're not going to buy a SIM card which is static and always connected. They're going to buy it runtime when they're going to fly, deliver a thing, when there is an emergency service. They want to be having a runtime QoS. And today it is like very difficult. You can instantiate the QoS, but you cannot assure that. And that's why Slice is not picking up. So I personally believe that we'll have a better definition and a better way of understanding what the programmable networks are. And we'll probably, like Dr. Tomek said, we'll have some apps, some partners who will take it to production and make it happen and say, this is how it is done. And I hope Ira is the one.
Anshul, anything to add?
Yeah, I think looking at next year, I hope that at least one of the panelists is an AI instead of humans. I guess that would be cool. But yeah, I think talking about programmable networks, the way things are going, the way APIs are, standardizing, maybe I would be able to talk to a network on this mic and make some change in real time. So I think with network APIs, these things would become easier for sure. And hopefully some of the congestion that we are facing today in MWC, I could, just dedicate a slice to Rakuten and maybe solve it and do a live telecast of your broadcast. So a lot of, I think, interesting use cases and innovation. So yeah, excited to see how things pan out next. And yeah, good luck with, Ira and some of the stuff. We are looking forward to do some innovation together too. So yeah, it'll be exciting times ahead.
Absolutely, and we appreciate Dr. Tomek's time with Axiata for visiting us and giving us his insight and sentiment. So thank you again.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation.
And Raul, good to speak to you again. It's the second year in a row, but in a different, somewhat a different perspective.
We all are the ecosystem.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
And Shul, good having you as always.
Thank you, Nabe.
All right.
Good to see you.
Have a good show.